For Creamer Media's Polity, I'm Shannon de Ryhove. Researcher and analyst Professor Raymond Suttner joins me to discuss the troubles in the ANC and the tripartite alliance. Welcome.
Thank you.
A lot of commentary takes it as given that the tripartite alliance is not going to last and is on the brink of collapsing. Do you think that's exaggerated?
I think it's not exaggerated, but I think there's the opposite tendency. There's some risk analysts who seem to think that nothing has changed, and they write about, well, at the time of the elections, they wrote saying, well, we hope now that Zuma has been re-elected is that he will stare down the left in the SACP and COSATU and just implement the NDP. So there's a lot of commentary which is surprisingly out of touch with what is happening now. Mm-hmm. My sense is that the alliance is really in big trouble. In the case of COSATU, you have got complete disarray at the moment. They have expelled NUMSA, and what it means is that COSATU remains almost entirely public sector unions, and the unions that side with NUMSA are almost 1/3 of the membership of COSATU. Now, it doesn't mean that everyone in NUMSA actually supports, or in those unions actually supports the position of their leadership, nor does it mean that everyone in the unions that remain is unsympathetic to the NUMSA position. So you've got this very significant split, although I read yesterday that FAWU doesn't agree with something about NUMSA, so it may be that the unity on both sides is fragile. But you've got a situation where COSATU has been more or less paralyzed for over a year, with the General Secretary, Vavi, suspended and not suspended, and we don't know what his future is in COSATU. What is known is that he has sympathy with the NUMSA position. So you have a situation where COSATU has not been a campaigning organization over the last year. Apart from the public sector union, they have NUM, and NUM is completely in decline after the strike at Marikana, things like that. So you've got a situation where COSATU is not a unified force, it's not a powerful force, and it is not clear what direction it will take, because this battle is still on within COSATU, because NUMSA is still, on the face of it, trying to get its suspension reversed and to come back into the federation. But its second option is to establish a new federation. It's not so easy to establish a new federation. As I've indicated, the FAWU, which is one of the most powerful unions backing NUMSA, said something yesterday, I can't recall exactly, which indicated that they were not in complete agreement. So you have the possibility of two federations, and the reason why there is this disarray is not a labour matter. It has something to do with the historic alliance, the very fact of the alliance, which was so powerful at the time of the elections in 1994. It is precisely the relationship with the ANC that is weakening the alliance on the side of COSATU, because many of the union leaders from Nahawu, NUM, and these went on to become ministers or high figures. The ANC tendency now towards patronage is one that is also gripping many of the leaders of COSATU. Now, in the case of the SACP, you have a situation where there was a time when SACP was held in very high esteem. It had great prestige because of the type of people who had been leaders of the SACP, people like Bram Fischer, whose father was Judge President of the Free State, whose grandfather was Prime Minister of the Free State, a person who could have risen to any position in South African society, but he sacrificed it all to fight the struggle. And he died a prisoner. You have Ruth First. You have Walter Sisulu, who later became known as a communist, maybe Nelson Mandela, according to some accounts. So you had this tremendous prestige that the Communist Party had when they came back. It was also prestigious because it was known for its theoretical work, the input that it made into strategy and tactics of the alliance as a whole, people like Joe Slovo particularly. Now, what has happened now is that much of the energy of the SACP seems to be devoted towards defending Zuma. It does have these elaborate policy formulations, but if you think of the imagery surrounding the SACP today, it is primarily in defense of Zuma and very vicious attacks on NUMSA, very strong language that is being used. So I think the alliance may not really exist, in fact, at the moment. COSATU could well implode. The SACP is a shadow of itself, and the ANC is in trouble. It's got less votes than before, and its legitimacy is not what it used to be.
What do you think of the new alternatives that are emerging?
The NUMSA United Front initiative is very important. NUMSA is a very well organized union, as far as I'm aware, and I think we can assume that the initiative has the backing of the NUMSA membership. I may be wrong, but my understanding is that NUMSA has a very strong shop floor tradition, and consequently what they initiated has their support. However, whether the type of initiative that they are starting will be an answer to the problems of the Zuma era government is another question. Because if you look at the range of issues that trouble people, the corruption, patronage, violence, undermining of institutions of state, the Hawks, the NPA, the South African Revenue Service, it seems to me that the declaration of the United Front was primarily motivated by the word neoliberalism. Now, the average person who is a shack dweller, the average person who is facing violent abuse from patriarchy, the word neoliberalism is not really meaningful to them. That would be the one thing I would raise. Other question is, who are the components? What are the components of the front? Are they grassroots movements with membership? Now, if you look at the steering committee, at least 4 of them come from one left tendency. Many of the others are individuals who are not representing an organization. And the one person who used to be in Abahlali, someone who was expelled from Abahlali, is on the steering committee. Abahlali itself has no presence at that United Front thing, as far as I'm aware. So one asks oneself, why do they exclude Abahlali Base, John Dolo? And what is the reason? And it seems to me that we may be facing a situation of a sort of sectarianism, because I don't know how you can exclude an organization that is clearly grassroots in its base. And the question really for the future of this new initiative, because I don't write it off by any means, it could become a significant factor, but can only become a significant factor if it tries to respond to the broad range of forms of oppression that people face. In the workplace is important, but on the land, in the homes, in the streets, gender-based, sexually based, violence by the police, informal violence, and the corruption and undermining of state institutions. Now, it may be that having initiated this, that they hear from people on the ground that these issues need to be taken up, and they may be forced to do this. I'm not suggesting by saying forced that they are unopen to this, but they may open themselves when the pressures come. And I think they are already coming.
Well, thank you for your insight.
Thanks a lot.
That was Professor Raymond Suttner speaking to Creamer Media's Polity about the troubles in the ANC and the tripartite alliance.